Imagine waking up in a world where silence ruled inside homes. A world where news took days, sometimes weeks, to arrive. A world where music was heard only through hand-cranked devices or live performances. Now, picture the precise moment when, suddenly, a voice from the ether shattered that silence, connecting millions of people in their living rooms in real time for the very first time. Today, we'll journey through the story of the first BBC broadcast in 1922. Not just a landmark in broadcasting, but a quiet revolution that transformed mass communication, culture, and the way we connect to the world itself. At the dawn of the 20th century, radio felt like science fiction, experimental, noisy, and for the few, it was more of a curiosity for hobbyists than a practical communication tool. But that changed one autumn day in Britain. In 1922, the newly founded British Broadcasting Company, known to us today as the BBC, made its first official broadcast. What started as a humble experiment in an improvised studio would soon become Britain's most influential voice, and eventually, the voice of the world. It would set global standards for ethical journalism, quality entertainment, and accessible education. This wasn't simply a switch being flipped. It was the birth of an era. The BBC didn't just popularize radio, it cemented the idea of public service broadcasting, a model that would be copied around the world. Today, we'll uncover the behind-the-scenes story of the pioneers who made that first transmission possible, and how a single broadcast became the foundation of a media empire that still shapes global opinion and connects people everywhere. To understand the greatness of the BBC, we need to step back and look at the technological and social landscape that preceded it. Radio, as we know it, wasn't born overnight. It began as an experimental invention at the end of the 19th century. Brilliant minds began to unlock the mysteries of electromagnetic waves. Names like Heinrich Hertz, who proved their existence, and the visionary Guglielmo Marconi, who transformed theory into practice by demonstrating the astonishing possibility of sending wireless signals across vast distances. Imagine the amazement in 1901 when Marconi sent a radio signal across the Atlantic Ocean for the first time. But in its earliest days, radio was crude. During the First World War, its potential exploded, but only in military hands. Communication between ships and submarines, between front lines and headquarters, proved invaluable. The war accelerated technological development, making receivers more robust and transmissions more reliable. But with the war over, what was to be done with this powerful technology? Its civil potential soon caught attention as a tool for entertainment, information, and education. In post-war Britain, the radio landscape was chaotic. Private companies and radio enthusiasts were experimenting, but without coordination. Airwaves became a noisy mess of interference. The British government, recognizing both the potential and the chaos, began envisioning a new model. There was concern over excessive commercialization and declining content quality. A national broadcaster, regulated and with a clear public purpose, became the ideal. Not merely to entertain, but to inform, educate, and uplift a nation still recovering from the devastation of war. The seed of the BBC was being planted. It was in this climate of innovation and necessity that 6 major British radio manufacturers joined forces to form the British Broadcasting Company. Their goal was to centralize control over broadcasts in the UK, ensuring organization and, more importantly, quality. To lead this ambitious venture, they chose a man who would become a legend, John Reith. A 33-year-old Scotsman, with an engineering background and a strong vision, Reith became the BBC's first Director General. His philosophy would become the cornerstone of the BBC: to inform, to educate, and to entertain, a triad that would shape public broadcasting around the world. The great day arrived. On November 14, 1922, at p.m. London time, the BBC made its first official broadcast. The location was a small experimental station in London, Tullow, situated in the Marconi House on the Strand. There was no grandeur. It was pioneering work, almost improvised. And whose voice broke the silence that day? It was Arthur Burrows, the BBC's first director of programs, His voice, calm, clear, and formal, would become the defining standard of the BBC announcer. His words were simple: "This is too low, Marconi House, London calling." Imagine the amazement of the few thousand listeners, using rudimentary receivers and headphones, who tuned into that inaugural sound. The program itself was modest, but meaningful. News bulletins sourced from Reuters ironically received by telephone, a short weather forecast, and classical music. It wasn't a grand spectacle, but the accomplishment was monumental. Despite the excitement among the team, many still saw radio as an expensive novelty, something for curious minds and scientists. But the seed was planted. The future of communication had begun. From this humble start, the BBC grew at astonishing speed. New stations were launched across the UK, and programming diversified rapidly. Radio, once a curiosity, became a household companion. News broadcasts brought world events into living rooms in real time, a revolutionary concept. Music concerts, transmitted directly from grand theaters, made culture accessible. Radio dramas, with their innovative sound effects, sparked imaginations like never before. Suddenly, radio connected people from different regions, social classes, and ages, uniting the nation in a shared listening experience. But the BBC's role went far beyond entertainment. Guided by Reith's vision, it became a crucial source of reliable information and public education. During national crises, like the 1926 general strike, when newspapers were paralyzed, the BBC became the nation's sole trustworthy news outlet, a stabilizing voice in turbulent times. This commitment to impartiality and accuracy would be tested even more during the Second World War, when the BBC transformed into the voice of resistance, broadcasting Winston Churchill's speeches and messages of hope to a world at war. Its credibility became legendary. Consider, for example, the abdication crisis of King Edward VIII in 1936. In a moment of national uncertainty, the BBC broadcast royal speeches that helped unite the nation and maintain stability. Educational programs brought learning to remote areas and people without access to schools. Technologically, the BBC pioneered recording techniques and live broadcasting methods that set industry standards not just in radio, but in paving the way for television itself. What began as a small broadcasting company became one of the world's largest and most respected media networks. The BBC expanded from radio to television, and later, into the vast digital landscape, always committed to its founding promise: to inform, educate, and entertain. Its international branch, the BBC World Service, became a beacon of impartial news, reaching hundreds of millions globally, often in regions where press freedom is rare. The BBC's commitment to impartiality, accuracy, and quality continues to serve as a model for media organizations worldwide. Radio, popularized by the BBC, transformed mass communication and paved the way for future technological advances. Without radio's success, perhaps television wouldn't have grown as quickly. The BBC's programming schedules and content transmission methods shaped how we consume information even in the streaming age. Today, the BBC remains a global force across digital platforms, with services like BBC iPlayer, constantly adapting to stay relevant in a world more connected and complex than ever. In 1932, the BBC broadcast the Olympic Games for the first time, the Los Angeles Olympics, directly to the UK, marking the birth of international sports coverage. In pop culture, iconic shows like Doctor Who and Sherlock weren't just entertainment, they became global phenomena, influencing generations and transcending borders. The story of the BBC's first broadcast is a powerful reminder of the immense power of media. From its earliest days, the BBC prioritized impartial reporting, a value that remains essential today in a world of misinformation. Its history teaches us that mass communication, when used responsibly and with integrity, can inform, educate, and unite people. The BBC's success shows that beyond emerging technologies, the core values of public service broadcasting, commitment to truth and society, are timeless. Its adaptation to the digital world, with platforms like BBC iPlayer launched in 2007, highlights its resilience. Its global influence led to the creation of public broadcasters in countries like Canada, Australia, and India, a testament to the model Reith and his team envisioned, from experimental radio signals to the constant stream of news and entertainment. We know today, the first BBC broadcast in 1922 wasn't just a technical achievement. It was the birth of a new era in mass communication, an era that connected homes, united nations, and fundamentally changed how society engaged with the world around it. It is a story of vision, integrity, and the enduring power of a voice that chose to inform, educate, and entertain. If you enjoyed this inspiring journey through the history of the BBC and the power of communication, please click like to help us reach more people with quality content. And to never miss our next explorations into history's most transformative moments, subscribe to the channel and activate notifications. To continue your journey and discover another world-changing event, click the video appearing on your screen. Now, thank you for joining us on this journey through time. May the story of the BBC inspire you to reflect on the immense value of quality information and how communication in all its forms continues to shape our lives. See you in the next video.